They're never going to give up trying to get us to stop eating meat. They really want us to give up the proper human diet, and they will come up with every reason under the sun to get us to stop eating meat. And you have to ask yourself why this is. I, for one, don't believe any of their official reasons for doing it, whether it's for the health of all of the world or because red meat allegedly causes all sorts of nasty plumbing issues in your heart or whatever their excuse du jour is. It's pretty easy to demonstrate that any concerns with the environment that might be real are caused are much bigger cause for them are the state of the food system, the high reliance on ultra-processed foods, the shipping of those foods around the country, just the general cost of producing them, the shipping of their ingredients to central locations for processing. You get the idea. Much more so than the consumption of red meat. I think it would be a good idea to decentralize the processing of red meat. And by processing in this, I mean actually taking the cow or the lamb or whatnot from the ranch to where it is turned from a cow into steaks. That processing, the old-fashioned term of processing. It'd be a good idea to decentralize that, get people eating as much local red meat as possible, instead of doing the strange thing America does, which, at least here in the United States, we are one of, if not the world's leading producer of beef, and we export most of it. We actually import red meat for ourselves to eat. It's very annoying. And to achieve most of the goals these people have, if they're honest, would require us to just decentralize meat. But they don't really want to do that. They want you to stop eating meat altogether. And the people who write articles like the one I'm going to briefly mention here today are true believers in their own cause. They actually believe the silly things they say. So remember that the person who wrote the following article isn't telling you a lie. They actually believe the silly stuff they're saying. No intention to deceive you here. The article is really short. It's the launch of The Atlantic's most recent issue, which had a big focus on why we need to be eating not meat, but plant-based alternatives, processed plant foods, which we don't know what the health outcomes are of a lot of, especially the more highly processed things, like Impossible Burgers, Beyond Meat, all that stuff. We don't know what the outcome will be of eating those things long-term instead of actually eating real meat, because there are some really odd ingredients in those things, as have been gone over, I think, ad nauseum in this community at this point already. But their headline here from The Atlantic is, "Why Persuading People to Give Up Meat is So Hard. Scientists have made impressive breakthroughs in lab-grown meat, but consumption of the real thing is more popular than ever." Good. I'm glad it's more popular than ever. In fact, I'm going to tell you, I would expect if we can just get people to eat a little less ultra-processed foods and more meat that they cook themselves at home, you're going to see some of these health outcomes, these negative health outcomes that we worry about so much in America, whether it's obesity or any of the metabolic issues that people go to, the kind of diets we talk about in this space, to resolve. We'll see a lot of those begin to lessen just that way without having to go on to some of the diets we actually advocate. I really do believe ultra-processed foods are at the heart of so many of the problems we have in the modern world. People eating things that spend most of their time in a box, that mysteriously don't decay, sitting in a box for months or years. That can't be good for us. No one questions it, though, or at least very few people do. And so people eating more meat that is presumably fresh is not a bad thing at all. If you can afford to do so, get your meat locally. Here's a short excerpt from this article, because it's actually just a really short piece that's meant to launch you into reading a whole lot of pieces from The Atlantic about evil things. So from the article, quote, "For many years, choosing to give up meat meant choosing to stop experiencing its taste. Vegan and vegetarian food have many merits, okay, but tasting like meat was not one of them. In the past half-decade, though, some new meat substitutes have come from impressively close to the original." No, they haven't. When plant-based meat companies and independent testers conducted blindfold tastings in recent years, my colleague Ann Lowry reported they found that many tasters couldn't tell the difference. Even some chefs had gotten confused. But despite science's breakthroughs in developing juicy, delicious meat substitutes, persuading Americans to go vegetarian or vegan still isn't easy. Even many people who claim to believe in the ethical value of vegetarianism persist in eating meat." End quote. I can answer the question they're leading into here with why that's the case. It's simple. Because those things don't actually taste like meat. They just don't. I have had, in my past, I've had some of the fake chicken years ago. That stuff tasted like a chicken nugget, which doesn't actually taste like chicken. The more processed a lot of actual meat is, the less it actually tastes like what it's supposed to. So like those fake chicken patties, they taste like ultra-processed chicken patties. That is not the same thing as tasting like chicken. I've actually once, a few years ago, when I think it was Carl's Jr. had a Beyond Burger before I went down, cut all the carbs out. When back in those days, Carl's Jr. was the first one, or Hardee's, depending where you are in the country. They were one of the first ones to try that burger. I tried one before I knew better. I could barely finish it. It was disgusting. It didn't taste like meat at all. It tasted fake and gross. And I'm not surprised that ever since then, every fast food chain that's tried to push that stuff has failed and failed spectacularly. You can't get people to eat this stuff because most people don't think it tastes like meat. And the ones who do, I'd really love to see if they've blunted their taste buds with tobacco habit or with just eating far too much sugar or something. As anybody in this space will tell you, if you cut sugar out of your diet for a long period of time, your taste buds recover. Our taste buds mostly are blunted from this stuff that we shouldn't be eating that we do. They become more sensitive. You start to notice the more nuances in your unprocessed foods by eliminating processed foods and especially refined sugars from your food consumption. Amazing how that works. But these fake meat items don't taste real. At least not in my experience, and not in the experience of many people who have tried every diet under the sun. If they found their way to our spaces, they usually admit the same thing. Those fake meats don't taste real. Because they don't. They're not. They are fake. They taste fake. They even have fake chemicals in them to make you think that you're eating meat, so that when you bite into your burger or your fake steak or whatever, a reddish fluid comes out. That's not to mimic the so-called bleeding of meat. And I know it's not actually bleeding. It's a protein that comes out. But they actually went so far for these fake meats to create that illusion. Their goal is to get you to stop eating meat altogether. Some of the articles they list here talk about all the great benefits for society and the world if you stop eating meat. It's silly. One of them is written by somebody named Peter Singer. If you don't know who the philosopher Peter Singer is, he is possibly the most famous misanthropic person in academia today and for several decades now. The man is closing in on retirement if he hasn't actually officially retired from teaching yet. But he is an absolute misanthrope. He doesn't like human beings at all. And they have him writing to try to convince you and me to stop eating meat. He likes animals more than he likes human beings. Take anything he says with a grain of salt. Why don't you answer this question for them? Why won't you stop eating meat? What did you think of fake meats if you ever tried them? Whether these were like the garden burgers from decades ago, or the Morningstar Farms chicken patties and breakfast sausage mimicking things that they used to sell years ago, or if you've actually tried Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers and some of the really weird fake meats that I've featured on this channel in the last year. Let me know if you have tried these things and what you think of them, because they are convinced that they taste like the original, are juicy and delicious. They used a lot of value-laden language in that article by design. And let me know why you think nobody is willing to give up the meat that they're eating, not voluntarily. And hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. So to sharing this on social media, that helps too. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore. Thanks for tuning in today.